Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our second panel discussion for the day. And we have a very exciting lineup of speakers here to share more about their perspectives on whether this is a good time to invest in F&B in Vietnam. This panel will be moderated by Mr. Tran. He currently serves as the CEO of Vietcetera Media, a digital media network that he co-founded in 2016. He has shared trends that are emerging in Vietnam and Greater Southeast Asia, including and not limited to venture capital, e-commerce, technology startups, food and beverage, tourism, retail, and trade. He has been covered by international broadcasts all over, and he advises a number of SMEs, family offices, and Fortune 500 companies seeking expertise in Vietnam. Over to you, Hao.
Thank you so much, Ishan. Hi, everybody. I'm Hao, the CEO, co-founder of Vietcetera. It's a media network, publishes mostly in Vietnamese, but we have English as well. The mission is to bring Vietnam to the world and the world to Vietnam, which perfectly aligns with today's webinar and the whole conference series that the team here is putting together. I'm really fortunate to have three guests with us today, our panelists. I'll start with quick introductions and we'll kind of get into it. Ken Atkinson is one of our guests. He is the former chairman, I believe, of Thornton, which is one of the biggest kind of tax payroll accounting firms in the world. He launched here in Vietnam, but he's also the vice chairman of the Vietnam Tourism Advisory Board as well. So some insights from Ken. We have Mr. Jinwoo Song. He's the CEO of Baemin. If you guys don't know what Baemin is, it's one of the largest, if not the largest, food delivery platforms in Vietnam. It's also a global company. They operate with different names elsewhere, including Korea. And then we have Mr. John Pemberton. He is the CEO, co-founder of Heart of Darkness, the most awarded craft beer brewery in Vietnam. They have a brewery in Singapore too, and perhaps future locations as the borders reopen. Those are our three panelists. I'm going to jump straight into it, guys. I believe there's a Q&A box here or a chat somewhere. So if you have comments, just make it along as we go. And then, yeah, let's get started. Guys, first question, it goes with everybody, but I'll kind of direct the questions as we go. Let's just start with some key macroeconomic developments over the last 2-3 years that have influenced your team's investment thesis or what you've observed in Vietnam food and beverage. I'll start with Mr. Jinwoo Song from Baemin. Delivery, we have no mysteries there. It's obviously taken off dramatically in the past, especially 6 months in Vietnam, or year, you could say. Mr. Jinwoo, maybe you can share some high-level numbers or trends that you've seen that have influenced why Baemin continues to prioritize Vietnam.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, great. Yeah, thanks for your question. So to me, I think that there are three key macroeconomic factors which will drive the overall F&B industry growth. The first is for sure the GDP growth, which can be related to the more like a purchasing power of the customer. And then secondly, especially population. So I would say they're more like the key factor for population is kind of a young generation, the portion of a young generation, and also portion of the single family. So it will be more like a critical driving force to drive the growth in their F&B sector. And last one is more like an online channel penetration. So especially as you mentioned, after long lockdown, people are more accustomed to more like online platform. So after lockdown, the people start using the online platform rather than offline one, and they get familiar with all the kind of online platform, not only for the food but also e-commerce as well. So I believe that these three factors, which is GDP growth and also population and also the online channel penetration, will be the key three major driving force to grow the Vietnamese the F&B growth.
Thank you, Mr. Jinwoo. Yeah, and if you live in Ho Chi Minh City, especially, or Hanoi, the number of Baemin jackets that you see are proliferating the city. So, of course, best of luck and wish the best for the team to continue growing as that trend grows. John, over CEO of Heart of Darkness. You've obviously Heart of Darkness was on a rampage in terms of global expansion. I remember the first article that was featuring your team on Vietcetera. You're talking about, brewing here in Vietnam and bringing it to the world. You guys have a brewery in Singapore. You export. But let's focus on the operation here in Vietnam. Export's one thing, but here as well. Last 2-3 years, no mystery, it's been tough. Delivery, you're selling directly to consumers now, not just distribution to the venues. How's that been going? What things have you had to adapt to in recent years?
So our brewery is actually located here in Vietnam, up in Baemin. We've got a bar in Singapore. Actually, obviously we got smashed really hard with COVID. First year wasn't too bad, but consumer confidence dropped massively after the first lockdown. And we saw a significant drop off on bricks and mortar sales. We did see a pickup in delivery, a little pickup in 2020. But then 2021, we were a little bit more ready for it, and we went very much online. We ran our essentials program, and we adjusted all of our tech as well so that we could integrate our ordering system with our delivery systems and everything. And that really saved us through the COVID period. But I think that is an anomaly, right? The reason that people, I think, want to hear what we want to say is what's Vietnam really like. So I think the macroeconomic things that really drove this were the growth in industry here. Vietnam, I'm an old sourcing and procurement guy. So I've been watching Vietnam for years and watching its industry grow. And with that industry, of course, you're growing wealth and you're growing experience or exposure to more Western thinking and more Western things. So that was really what drove our decision to be here, coupled with the fact that Vietnam is one of the world's biggest beer consumers. This is Heineken's biggest market globally. So that, coupled with the Vietnamese natural curiosity for everything, really gave us confidence that coming in here, we would be able to try something that was very innovative and very new to the Vietnamese market. So it was a big risk in many ways. But all those macroeconomic factors that were driving the country, I believe, also helps drive us forward. So yeah, we did see, it was a slow first year for us as we tried to educate the market as to what craft beer was. And we put a lot of time and a lot of money into marketing and telling that story and explaining what craft beer was. But by year 2, it really picked up quickly. By year 3, I was extremely happy with where the business was. And I see a great future for it. I think a lot of people have been talking about the experiential part of the Vietnamese F&B scene as being absolutely critical. And I couldn't agree more with that. It is a total critical thing to do. If you're going to ask people to spend more money than they would in the local restaurants, you've got to give them a reason to do that and a good experience.
Got it. And yeah, just for the audience to know, a quick correction which John made, breweries in Vietnam, bars in Singapore, and moving forward. I knew that, I just word was incorrect there. Moving over to Ken, similar question, but I want to add a small element to it, which is the tourism, both domestic and primarily international. If you guys don't know, the borders are now open. You can enter Vietnam without restrictions when you arrive, at least. I'd love to hear from you, Ken. People are talking about, their venues, if they're running F&B here, revenue going up 20% like it was normally. Is that going to happen, and how long is it going to take? What are we going to see in the short term in terms of what current operators can expect? But for those looking to enter the market, if they're bringing a concept that does appeal to tourism, how big of a factor is it for their business? So I'd love to get your insight on that.
Okay, but let me just first comment on the economic side of it a little bit. That I agree with everything that's already been said, but I think it's the emerging middle class that's driving a lot of investment into things like food and beverage, retail, health, and education. And the average per capita income in Vietnam last year just passed the $3,000 per capita per year. And if you talk to people that were engaged in China, or still are engaged in China really started to take off when that per capita income past 3,000 US dollars. So I think, you know, Vietnam's entering a really exciting next 10 years of growth. And that will be driven largely by the middle class, which is expected to double in size over the next 10 to 12 years. So,
and Ken, quick question on that per capita note. So 3,000's obviously at the country level. Within the city, that number goes up significantly. Is that right? Or yeah.
Well, there's per capita income, and then there's all the wealth that's been created, particularly through you know, ownership and trading of land and real estate. Not to mention the money that's been made by young emerging entrepreneurs that have started up very successful businesses. So it's coming from several different fronts, I think.
Very good. And yeah, following up on my latter part of the question about tourism, you know, most local entrepreneurs here, including Heart of Darkness, let's say, you know, lots of local customers, but you know, obviously a lot of tourists too. I mean, maybe John, you can answer that question later too, but Ken, like, I don't want to talk percentages necessarily, but can F&B operators expect a bump, short-term, medium-term, long-term, or maybe it's best to just focus on our local market?
Well, I think, you know, the local market in many sectors is neglected. And when you look at tourism numbers, in 2019, we had 85 million domestic tourists and we had 18 million foreign tourists. Obviously, the spending power of the foreign tourists and the revenue from foreign tourists was way higher than Vietnamese. It was on a 2/3 foreign and one third local level. But you know, tourism. So like foreign arrivals break up into two for me. I mean, there's obviously the tourists, and then there's obviously the business travelers. Business travelers tend to go to the major cities, and the tourists tend to spend little time in the major cities and go out to the country or to the resort cities. So I think that's the challenge for, you know, food and beverage operators, is where do you actually position yourself? Because I think, you know, if we look forward, I think domestic tourism is going to rebound very quickly. I think international tourism is going to come back relatively strongly in a much shorter time frame than business travel. So if you look at the forecast for tourists for this year, international tourists for this year, it's probably, I think we'll be lucky if we get 3 million compared to 18 million in 2019. But I think we'll see it, and we've already seen it overtake, for example, in domestic travel. I mean, you couldn't get a hotel room in Dalat, you couldn't get a hotel room in Phu Quoc. There were people literally sleeping on the streets in Dalat.
I'll ask John a quick question similar, and then we'll go to Jinwoo for my next question. John, just really quick comment. What was Heart of Darkness before, 2 years ago, to what you're preparing for in the next 6 months and beyond?
Fully agree with all of Ken's comments there, and that really reflects the experience we've seen. We lost about 25% of our business when we lost the tourists, but most of our business would have been business travelers. And then those tourists that go off to the resorts, we tend to get them in the afternoons when the wives are going shopping and they're stopping Ho Chi Minh, and then the husbands slip by to Heart of Darkness in the afternoons and have a few beers. But yeah, tourism, it would be the business travelers that are more important to us. But yeah, 25-30% is what we lost, I believe.
Do you expect that number to be like replaced or even go higher, or even do you even care about that audience anymore? Because maybe the local audience is just you've seen that instead grow.
Our focus has actually always been on the local market. I mean, we built this to be a Vietnamese bar, right? I mean, it was for the Vietnamese. It's an experience. My belief on that is, given who we are and what we do, craft beer fans are going to find us anyway. They're going to, we're all in the right places for them to look us up and find us. So I don't really focus too much on the foreigners or the tourists. They'll come. It's mainly the Vietnamese that I want to focus on. I mean, that's
excellent.
90 million of them, right? So
Yep. Great. Thank you, John.
They all love to party.
they do indeed.
Thank you to the both of you for the insights there. Jinwoo, Mr. Jinwoo, again, CEO of Baemin. For those of you, obviously, Baemin is here in Vietnam, not in perhaps Singapore, wherever you're calling in from. But Jinwoo, you guys don't do just delivery. You guys have your own cloud kitchens too. I see a lot of these big buildings with the big logos, and you can't go in, so you can't really see what's going on behind the scenes there. Maybe you can share a bit about that, because in a way you are directly involved as an operator as well. What are some observations from that perspective?
Okay, so we are operating 6 cloud kitchen. We call the Baemin kitchen in Saigon. And the reason that we operating our own kitchen is that it's more like a laboratory to understand our consumer better. So what they like, and then what is the key factor to buy the food, etc. So from that, our direct channel to the customer, what we learn is number one, the customer is quite trendy. For example, maybe in a month, we will develop the new menu called the Bento 9 to 5, which will be served only for the office worker in main Ho Chi Minh City. The reason is that we observe that many office workers are quite busy, and then they want to pick up very simple menu with a regional price. So based on that customer demands, we develop the menu, and then we launch. We have a plan to launch it, and then that menu came from the more like a consumer side. Like that way, by operating our Baemin kitchen, we can have a better sense on the customer needs and then what they want, and also their behavior as well. So that's what I call the Baemin kitchen is more like a laboratory. It's a lab to understand the consumer. So that's one of the benefit of Baemin kitchen. But at the same time, we will leverage Baemin kitchen as more like a platform to nurture the local restaurant. So we have many it's more like a cloud kitchen for them. We have some tenant restaurant, and then they operate their beans with our Baemin kitchen platform, and then they incubate their beans, and then they can expand. So that's another model that we will try. We call it more like a cloud kitchen, and by doing so, we will do a different kind of experiment to formulate a different type of restaurant in the Vietnamese market.
And is that initiative going to be a growth one for you guys? I mean, experimentation sometimes implies, let's try it out, let's see what happens. Yes. It seems like it's working, otherwise you would have gone from 1 to 6. Are you going to see 20 in the near future? What does that look like for you guys?
The primary goal is more like understanding the consumer behavior and also the F&B market. And also, the F&B market is quite trendy. And then to take more like a very secure position, we need to read all their kind of market dynamics and also the consumer insight as well. So in this regard, I will say our BMK is more like a laboratory to understand the F&B market trend and also consumer behavior. But
a quick question then, Mr. Jinwoo, what's the #1 trend for you guys right now, based on the cloud, if you can share?
So we are very agile to develop the menu. So upon the customer demand, that we can quickly develop the menu and then produce it and then pack it in a very nice way. So for example, if there's another new menu which consumer want and develop us, actually we can make this new menu in 1 or 2 weeks. So with a great packaging, and also we can list this menu into our Baemin application. So it's more like a great platform to test and run, right? And then even though some menu turn out to be fail, then in return, we can get a more like a consumer insight, and also we can have a better understanding on the consumer behavior, saying that what really our customers want.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Jinwoo. This is a question for Jinwoo and for John, and I'll start with John here. impact of technology, you mentioned you took some time to integrate the delivery systems with your kitchens, and you've seen an uptick in deliveries, obviously. And that investment is not a short-term one. I'm sure you're determined to keep it growing, not just as a gap to fill the cash flow kind of needs. How has it been so far? But also looking forward, do you see that impact of technology continuing to be adding to the bottom line of Heart of Darkness?
Absolutely. I mean, we have a challenge in that we are very much an experiential location, right? So people don't often think about us for food delivery. They think about us for beer delivery, but not for food delivery. But the lockdown really helped us. I mean, we were probably 10% online delivery prior to the lockdown. We moved that to 20% or 25% actually after lockdown, after this last lockdown. So I think what Jinwoo was saying is true. It is sticking to a degree, but we'll see how that plays out. But I think there's a lot more space for the technology to play a role in the deliveries here and to make things more efficient. I mean, Vietnam has excellent micro delivery. I mean, it's phenomenal, right? You can get anything. We can pretty much get anything from order to a customer's door in 40 minutes as a fairly standard delivery time. And so I can only see that getting better and better. I mean, I think back to when I lived in the States like 20 odd years ago, everything was online then. I mean, you'd go to the stores to check the product out, but you'd order it online and get it delivered to your house. Vietnam's still moving from that wet market, go buy your vegetables every morning mentality to what we can do with online retail now. So I think if we just keep plugging away at it and stay focused on it, there's definitely a lot of room for growth there. I'm definitely factoring it in as a major part of our future.
Do new entrants to the market, or even those existing? I mean, Heart of Darkness, the technology, makes sense because you guys have scale. You have beer, which is easier to food's another thing, beer is another thing. But do new entrants need to have the technology that you guys have? Is it a good idea for them, or should they kind of wait and see and then implement it?
I think you can get relatively affordable technology to manage that these days. I mean, everything we're doing is affordable. We just had some customization apps done to bridge everything together and to make it all work nicely, but it wasn't a massive investment. So I think as long as you're tech savvy or you've got tech savvy people on your team, you can do it at a very affordable price and deliver a very slick solution. I mean, when people deliver from us, it's all automated, and then they get, they do talk to the staff to finalize the orders, but after that, everything goes into an app that updates the customer on where the driver is, when the driver's going to arrive, and all of that stuff. And I think that experience, giving the customer that experience, I think is very important. It gives them confidence that the order's been received and it's on the way and that people are paying attention to them. But those are all very affordable.
Excellent. Mr. Jinwoo, Heart of Darkness, less than 40 minutes. Is that what you guys are seeing? I hope it's less than that, because I mean, you guys have like a very sophisticated tech stack. I mean, sometimes it's longer. There's no mystery here. We know there's a shortage of drivers. At least that's what I've seen. I'd love to hear from you guys how you are tackling that challenge of delivery, last mile, shortage of drivers. What's going on there?
So it is fairly challenging to more like operate very stable kind of a delivery system as a food delivery platform. So to make it more stable, so we have two agendas. The first one is that we are keep upgrading our system so that we can optimize our demand, the rider demand, and also rider supply at the same time. It should be more like a real time. Sometimes we have some peaks on our rider supply, but we have more like the shortage in the demand order, but vice versa as well. So it is very critical to balance these two, demand versus supply, so that we can provide more like same quality of service to the customer. So we are focusing on also investing a lot to upgrade our kind of rider system, so that we can provide more stable kind of service to our customer. And secondly, it's more like a rider quality and the rider service quality, which means that yeah, we have many riders, and for sure in Vietnam, so everybody can ride a motorbike. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it is very easy to hire more like a qualified riders. So because why we focus on the rider quality is actually for the food delivery point of view, the rider is actually our touching point between the food delivery platform player and our consumer. So in this regard, we are focusing a lot to hire more like a talented rider as well. And then we invest a lot to train them in a more like so that they can deliver our food in a more professional way. So these two will be more like a critical to fortify our capability as a true delivery platform.
Got it. And a quick note on that too, just to showcase the year-on-year growth for food delivery in Vietnam. What does that growth look like? Are you guys doubling every year, every month? I mean, that would be crazy,
yes.
But yeah.
Actually, we keep increasing our kind of order and also our number of rider as well. So I think that not only Baemin but other player we keep growing. But obviously, especially after lockdown, the overall we can see huge growth potential. Especially from the online platform, not only for the food delivery but also the other e-commerce platform. So macro wise, I will see that that will be our upcoming trend of the more like an online expansion.
Got it. Excellent. Well, guys, that wraps up some of the core key questions. I'm going to do a general question for everybody about the outlook for the industry. And then soon after, we have a couple Q&As which touch upon that, and that'll wrap up today's panel. But going over to Mr. Ken, I'd like to get your first opinion about the outlook of the food and beverage industry. Mentioned emerging middle class. You mentioned about not just the cities but everywhere else. Let's give some tips to those looking to enter the market. What are some potential preferences that people have? Is it fast food? Is it dine-in? Maybe you can share kind of high-level touch points there.
Yeah, well, I think let's go back to it was a flippant but maybe serious comment about the fact that Vietnamese love to party. Ever since I first came here in 1989, when people were relatively poor, I mean, there was a very high poverty rate in Vietnam. People love to go out and eat, and we see that. I mean, you go by these small kind of food stalls or small open cap restaurants in the evening; they're absolutely full. It's the Western food places that are half empty. The Vietnamese places are just all full because Vietnamese it's in their nature, it's in their culture to go out and eat. And if they want to be with friends, they don't normally have the space at home to do that. So you're preaching to the converted in many respects. And certainly that growth in the middle class is taking their preferences, if you like, up a level or up 2 levels. And the higher income people, they spend a lot on food and beverage. I mean, $1,000 bottles of wine and most expensive seafood and caviar. There's quite a few restaurants in those categories that are very, very busy with Vietnamese. So I think it's the first thing I'll say to anybody looking to enter the market, don't expect it to be easy. I mean, patience, and patience are the 3 key ingredients for doing anything in Vietnam. I think rental space, costs of rental are kind of relatively high to everything else that you see in Vietnam. So that's another factor that you need to take into account when you're looking at the market. So demand, yes, in key city locations, Hanoi, Ho Chi Minh, Da Nang, Hai Phong, Can Tho. But the resort areas, obviously, there's also significant potential demand. So I think it's matching the product to the, the countries or the target markets that Vietnam's focusing on for those different destinations. So if you take Cam Ranh and Nha Trang, for instance, it's been predominantly a Russian target market and Chinese. So you've got to take that into account. Hoi An is very much, or Da Nang Hoi An is very much Korean, and Hong Kong, Taiwan. And then you've got Phu Quoc, which actually doesn't have that many foreign tourists. It was only 500,000 in 2019. So you've just got to be very careful, I think, in your analysis.
Got it. Thank you, Ken. John, I'll move it over to you, and then conclude with Jinwoo on this particular topic. Outlook for the F&B industry. When, let's say, craft beer started really pumping, let's say 4 or 5 years ago, and it's continued since then. People were always, and I'm just putting it out there, definitely a misconception. People believe, Vietnamese people, they're not going to spend this kind of money. They don't need these experiences, and obviously, craft beer has disproven that misconception. I'd love to hear from you over the next couple of years. What are some adoptions and trends that you think Vietnamese will continue to drive towards? And price point aside, are Vietnamese people actually sensitive to these prices? I'd love to hear your 2 cents on those topics and anything else you want to add.
Okay. I think what I'll say is completely underpinned by what Ken just said. I think you have to look at the market in its different stratospheres, right? If you're charging $100,000 for a dong for a beer, when on the street you're going to get a macro beer for 20,000 or 30,000. You've got to be able to justify that, and you've got to be able to target the right audience. If you think about it, you go to a nice restaurant, you'll be paying that for a glass of wine or for a fine whiskey, right? And I've always seen craft beer as more akin to that, and that's the target market that I'm targeting. So we are going for that emerging middle class, and we're going for the experience, right? So the Vietnamese have this wonderful curiosity about everything in life. Very different to certain other nations that I've lived in, which are very closed-minded about their own cuisine and their own culture. Vietnamese are incredibly open, and they just want to experience different things, and they're willing to pay for that. But I think the big caveat to that is this market is a very, very demanding market in terms of quality and service. You really need to be on top of it. If you're not, you'll very quickly fall through the cracks. The Vietnamese know what they want, and if they're paying 100,000 dong for a beer, they want quality. They want high-end service. They want an experience that they can enjoy. And also, to Ken's point, this is a very, very social culture, incredibly social culture. Most Asian cultures are, in my experience, but particularly so the Vietnamese. They love nothing more than coming together with their friends or with their families. And they want that to be a special time. So they're happy to spend money on that, as long as they're going to get good service, good quality food, good quality beer. So I think don't underestimate the difficulty of entering this market would be my advice on it. Pay attention to the details and focus on the locals, focus on the local market. The money's there, the willingness to experiment is there. So deliver a good quality product, deliver a good quality service, and you've got a fighting chance of building a very solid business here. Your point about craft beer entering this market at a crazy expensive price and settling in and getting established and now growing quite nicely, I think, locally across the whole country is true. And I think it's for all those reasons. We've all worked hard to develop quality products.
Very good. Thank you, John, for sharing that. Lastly, Jinwoo, tourists not really a big factor for you. Obviously, delivery is more important. You want people, to their office, to their home, once, twice, 7 times a week, if possible, for whatever occasion. Do you talk about the cloud kitchens, for instance, you're experimenting, you're learning what the trends are. Let's start there. What are people ordering? Do they prefer Japanese food, Korean food? Do they prefer fried chicken, McDonald's? I don't know about McDonald's, but that's a side note there. What are they ordering? What's the outlook look like?
So actually, there's no more like a single kind of answer. So actually, I can see a variety of menu selection, even the same customer. So sometimes they order Japanese, sometimes they order Korean, and also milk tea and etc. But to me, it's more like a routine food is more like a milk tea, and also more like a Vietnamese local food for their dinner and also the lunch, especially lunchtime. But as John mentioned, what I found from this trend is that Vietnamese customers are quite trendy. So they are ready to pay for the premium to taste this kind of trendy food. So in this regard, what we observe in these days is that people really want to try something different. Yeah. And then that trend can be read from our application. For example, we recently launched new icon called Baemin Pix. And the idea came from to capture the need to try something new. So if you click the Baemin Pix, BM Pix, so you can see very different restaurant, from different location. And then we handpicked this restaurant because to capture the need who want to try something new, who want to be more trendy. So I can see that the restaurant or merchant who is fastly growing is the one who keep eyes on their customer needs and then try to develop different kind of menu to capture their needs. For example, a few years ago, the coffee was more or less same. Latte and a cappuccino or something like that. But in these days, you can see different kind of a coffee. Sometimes you can see egg coffee and avocado coffee, and then even pineapple coffee. So the way that our restaurant and also the merchant make the menu is quite creative. And then the reason they can be creative is that there is a huge demand for this kind of different menu and then trendy menu. So overall, the bottom line is that we can more like a frequent or general kind of a menu or cuisine type is milk tea and also coffee and the local food. But on top of that, I can see huge demand for the unique food and the different food so that they can satisfy from the different selection.
Thank you, Jinwoo. That concludes today's panel, but I'm going to have one question. It's going to be specific for John because we've covered huge macro trends, talked about delivery, we've talked about industry. So John, specific question for you. Beyond Saigon, do you see Heart of Darkness opening anywhere else in Vietnam in the next few years, and why? Saigon's the the most metro of all the cities. All the international folks are here. People can spend. Is it going to be in Binh Duong? Is it going to be in Hanoi? Hanoi is obviously a big city too. What's that look like? Quick one.
Hanoi was actually meant to be last year. We had the GM hired and everything. We had the site picked out. We had the investment lined up, but COVID kind of derailed all of that. And I've just made a decision to hunker down this year and focus on rebuilding everything as we pull out of COVID. But 100%. I mean, I want a Heart of Darkness up in Hanoi. I'd love to have a Heart of Darkness in Da Nang as well. And then, I mean, our plan is to put a Heart of Darkness in every major city across the region. But Vietnam is our home base. It's a very important base, and it's somewhere that I want us to always be strong. Because I love it, but I also see huge potential in this country in the coming years. I can't see it doing anything but get stronger and stronger every day. I think one thing that we have missed in this conversation, though, is your specialty, Hal, and the importance of marketing and the importance of actually reaching out and communicating to the Vietnamese too about what you're doing and how you're doing it. I find if we turn off our marketing, it has a massive impact, and when we ramp up our marketing, it has a massive impact the other way. So sorry, I just wanted to add that bit because I think that's an absolute critical factor here in Vietnam, is actually reaching out and communicating to the customer and keep communicating to the customer.
Exactly, and there's so many. If you don't have a voice, sometimes Vietnamese. I used to say if you don't even have a Facebook page, you don't exist in Vietnam. As bad as that sounds, or Instagram and so on and so forth. Well, you guys, just to summarize, and thank you everyone for the insights. I think John's note from a expansion point of view, hunkering down, doubling down on the big business here in Saigon because it's so big, lots of opportunities. But Hanoi and Da Nang and Baemin's expansion has also reflected that. Start here, win the market. There's other opportunities in Vietnam, but Saigon definitely is the place to be. Thank you so much, guys, for joining today's panel. I believe that concludes things. So I'll wrap it up there. Mr. Ken Atkinson, Mr. Jinwoo Song, Mr. John Pemberton, representing some of the three iconic kind of groups in here: tourism, craft beer, food delivery. I think we've covered all the bases here. I think that's it for me. Ishan, I think that I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Hao, for moderating this wonderful panel. And thank you, John, Ken, and Jinwoo again for taking the time out. We really appreciate it.